Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for 1 bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Mavs Moneyball After Dark. This is Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe coming to you on Friday nights just after 10 o'clock, which is a reasonable time for a podcast. I'm delighted by this. The Dallas Mavericks just fell to the Orlando Magic in their second preseason game, 110-105. Josh, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. A little choked up about Jason Kidd's undefeated preseason record going up in flames, but I'll manage to make it through this podcast.
I didn't know that. I tend to turn down the volume when I'm writing, just because I'll they'll throw things like that at me, and that'll completely ruin my train of thought. Anyhow, it was an interesting game, I think. So, just as a quick summary, if you missed it, Friday night preseason game. Don't really blame you if you decided to opt out and go do something else. Luka Doncic started with Reggie Bullock, JaVale McGee, Dorian Finney-Smith, and then in a late interesting ad was Jaden Hardy. The Mavericks came out early, looked really good, offensively at least. Luka Doncic looked outstanding, and the Mavericks sort of took it to the Magic. And when Luka was playing, the game was in control. In the second half, they sat Luka. Christian Wood had a chance to cook by himself, did a pretty good job. And then in the fourth quarter, they played, kind of the entire back end of the bench guys that are trying to make the roster. Things like, there's a Tyler Hall, McKinley Wright. And at that point, the lid was just on the basket for the Mavericks. And they didn't play very good defense. And the Magic basically just quietly put them away.
Yeah, I think the story of this game is the Mavericks there's only one more preseason game left. They're only playing 3 of these. So I have to imagine that third preseason game, the starters are the important players. There's not going to be a ton of minutes for them if they even play at all.
Right.
But the first half was, aside from, the 6 minutes Hardy got because he started, it was all the main guys. I mean, I think that was the closest we're going to see before the season starts, something resembling like the normal rotation. And nothing too shocking or surprising, but it was just cool to see so quickly into the preseason, this is what it's going to look like. Because, with Luka coming off Eurobasket, I honestly wasn't sure how much he was going to play this preseason, but he played he played 18 minutes in the first half. That's pretty good. And he looked great. And kind of everything went according to plan, aside from Hardy starting, which was, probably just a nod to, reward him for.
So I'm curious about that. I'm really curious about that. And I wrote I devoted kind of a whole blurb to this in my recap, mainly because I just don't really know what to write about preseason games. That's sounding like an idiot. And I sort of wonder if they're seeing what they have with him with the rest of the key players to see if he can maybe float them some minutes, because our sort of overarching question for the entire offseason, once Brunson left, was how are they going to replace these backup minutes? They've talked to us, in the media about Spencer Dinwiddie and Luka, pretty much being it. And then they're going to buy minutes elsewhere. Well, I was been under the impression Dinwiddie's going to start, and Dinwiddie didn't start tonight, which is, that is what it is. But I didn't mind the Hardy minutes. I mean, he's a willing shooter. Defensively, I think they'll get picked on a little bit, but I don't. The sort of lineups that they're wanting to put out, like, I think the JaVale McGee defensive presence is like really overstated. And what if they just are trying to see what they have? Because I just think that the backup point guard minutes become an issue at some point. And if you can spread Luka and Spencer out for as much as possible and really only need them for the fourth quarter together, I think that could serve the Mavericks well. Now, I'm probably wildly overstating this because it's preseason and maybe Jaden Hardy just goes away. But I'm at the point right now where through summer league and preseason, the Hardy minutes are not causing me consternation. I'm enjoying them, and I'm not, maybe it's not fair to young Josh Green, but I just he's not taken away from things. Am I just missing the boat there?
No. I mean he didn't play particularly great, but like you said, he only had one turnover in 20 minutes, 5 fouls, which goes. That's like rookie numbers, but only one turnover in 20 minutes, which is nice. I mean, but he was 2 of 10, 1 of 5 from 3. So he didn't really do all too much, but like you said, he didn't look like wildly out of place on the floor. I just assumed he was starting because, his kid rewarding him for basically single-handedly winning that game 1. And then maybe just being like, what does he look like next to Luka? And,
right.
What he looks like is just kind of like an off-ball shooting point guard, like he's got kind of the frame of a bigger point guard, but he plays like a 2 guard. So when you've got a 6'7", 6'8" point guard, it actually kind of makes a little sense.
They watched it with Brunson. Like, obviously they're not even remotely similar players, but you get away with the size archetype for periods of time. I don't know. I hate to read too much into it, but I've been thinking about this, and I have, you know me, I talk to like everybody who DMs me. And one of the things that I try to tell people who think that the Mavericks are going to win just a ton of games is that they still don't have enough bodies. They still don't have enough guys. You need 10 guys that you can trust night in and night out because of injuries, because of nights off, because sometimes guys just don't have it. And right now, I think the Mavericks have 8. That's not to say they're going to be bad or anything. It's just there's a little more variance to the outcome. And if Hardy can somehow, find his way into that 10 to 11 man rotation during the season and buy Dallas time, I think that's really important.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. And I think it especially correlates with the thing that I noticed the most in the first half was that Frank Ntilikina and Dwight Powell did not play at all in the first half. And so I think presumably we all thought that Frank was going to be in the I thought that says a lot, right? I think presumably a lot of us thought, what the Mavericks have been saying, at least publicly saying is, Frank is going to be in the mix for backup point guard minutes, but he didn't look particularly great in that first preseason game. Didn't come off the bench. Kind of surprising. And I wonder, if the Hardy thing was just an experiment where those 6 minutes that Hardy played in the first half, would those normally go to Frank in like the regular season? So we'll have to see how much of the Hardy thing was an experiment or, a shifting of what Kid is actually thinking about doing for the regular season. But the no Dwight thing, I don't know if it's it might be surprising for a long time Mavs fans because he is inevitable. Like he's been on this team for so long and he always plays. Like it's just crazy. I don't remember a time. When was the last time Dwight Powell was healthy and not part of like the rotation? Like when he first got traded here,
2015.
2015, yeah. So like it's crazy. But then you look at it and you're like, okay, well if McGee starts, you're playing Wood and Kleba off the bench, like, and you're not going to necessarily play a ton of two big lineups, it looks like where's Powell going to get minutes unless, one of those guys needs a night off or there's an injury. So I thought it was both kind of surprising and also, oh, well, I guess this makes sense if the Mavericks are really committed to, having, one of Luka or Dinwiddie on the floor. They're two defensive wings, whether it's Bullock, Finney-Smith, Josh Green, and then, playing another big like McGee or Wood, or the only time they played two bigs in the first half was Wood and Kleba, and they're both shooters. So it was kind of cool. They always had 4 or 5 shooters on the floor in the first half. So I thought that was the big takeaway for me, was those two guys not getting off the bench in the first half when it looked like the Mavericks were kind of playing it like a real game.
Well, then that allows me to pivot to the next thing I want to talk about, and it's specific to Luka Doncic, who, like you said, looked great. This is a thing that I saw him do in a Eurobasket play, and I was curious as to how, and he did it a lot, and I was curious to see when it would come to the NBA. Please tell me if I'm wrong here. I have been seeing him use a jump stop step through to just get defenders lost in ways that he did not do last year. He did it once and threw a behind the back pass to a corner. Don't know who shot the ball because the ball didn't go in, but and then he's had a couple of makes and one off it. Do you know what move I'm talking about?
Yeah. I think I know. Is it when he gets in the middle of the floor and just kind of,
and he does like a 2-foot jump stop and just, he pump fakes on the jump stop and either passes out of it or steps through it like he's doing like a show and go type move like we used to do in the 8th grade on post-up moves. Like just real old man, like I'm just having fun with the defense type stuff. And if he gets a guy in the air, he almost always does something really cool with it. And then if he doesn't, he just shoots a ball and like goes for the straight up lay-in. And he uses his size, strength, and really going at his own pace in such fun to watch ways. Now, I'm sure he's done this before. Somebody's going to come at me tomorrow, but I've just been noticing this on moves more and more with how he does it. And it's just a lot of fun to watch. And that then allows me to pivot directly into probably the thing that most people are going to take away from this, is that the Christian Wood, Luka Doncic pick and roll combo is going to be mean.
Oh yeah, Wood is as advertised on the offensive end of the floor so far. And the nice thing is, I think a couple preseasons ago when Josh Richardson hit every single 3-pointer, and I think we all were trying to temper our expectations, but people got really excited. The difference is Wood. This is kind of what Wood does, right? Like the last 2 to 3 years. He has just been an offensive machine. He's not a volume shooter. Like I know that people want to talk about, good stats, bad team guy, but usually those guys get their stats because there's no one else on the team. They just kind of put up a bunch of shots until they get their points and rebound. Wood has been basically like a 50-40 guy for the last 2 years. So, as bad as those Rockets teams were, you can't fake, being a starter and shooting 50% from the floor, like on high volume of attempts, and they're not just layups. This is like the real deal, and him being in the Mavericks, kind of flowing offense with Luka and spacing. It looks real good. And I know it's preseason, but man, this is kind of what he's been doing the last 3 years. And it's going to be, like you said, they're going to be, I think you said this on Twitter, they're going to just be a pain in the ass for teams to try to guard, especially like in a regular season where teams are not necessarily getting the most detailed scouting reports because it's such a grind and there's not as much practice time as you want. Like the Mavericks are just going to be able to pick and roll some teams to death.
Well, so here's something, and I'm going to bother people with this, but I did not deep dive Christian Wood at all. I wanted to see him play with Luka and get a sense of what his game could be like with Luka, because to a degree, what he's done before ultimately doesn't matter. And what I saw tonight, particularly on the roll, he drew 2 fouls at the basket in ways that Dwight Powell cannot. Dwight gets fouled on oops, but he doesn't get fouled on catches, because guys know that if you get Dwight Powell on the catch on a dive, he's not really going to do anything with it. And that's not Dwight's fault. We see him a couple of times when he does these moves where he shoots the ball all the way over the rim somehow because he's just like trying to get up a shot and get an attempt. Whereas Wood's much longer wingspan causes defenses problems. He's got a lot more balance when he's on the catch and he's in the middle of the lane. There are things on the roll that I've been told about, but I hadn't actually seen other than a few highlights. Because in my brain, a lot of what I was expecting was Wood creating space for Luka the way KP created space for Luka early in that 2019-20 run when Luka was just cooking at the rim. And yes, that's an element of what we're going to get. But the dive elements and the way Luka found him on a couple of like just nifty threading of the needle, it's, this, and anybody that's ever played like the roll man, it's not easy. I think it's really overstated by fans. It's like, oh, he's got to set the screen and go to the basket. No. You got to know where to roll. You can't roll just to any one spot. You got to notice the defense in front of you. You got to notice where the wing defense is on the help. There's a lot of elements to it, and it's not a simple process. And if the Mavericks can get Luka and Wood to have some reasonable chemistry, then it's just going to be a pain.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Wood that we just haven't seen here in forever, and especially since Luka's been drafted, is he is just a world's better athlete than any pick and roll partner that Luka has had in terms of just explosiveness. And
this includes Porzingis. Porzingis didn't have any burst.
Right. Porzingis was a good dunker and things like that, and had a good length, but in terms of like speed, burst, acceleration, Pal has some of that, but he just has his, 6'10" wingspan or whatever it is. So it's tough for him to go through guys when your body's built like that. But Wood is not built like that, to say the least. So it's like, it's been something the Mavericks haven't really had since, I want to say maybe like the Tyson Chandler, Brandon Wright years, where they just have the horses now in the pick and roll, and they just didn't have that before. And Wright just sticks out like a sore Wood, apologies, just sticks out like a sore thumb, because like before it just kind of felt like the Mavericks, with Powell, they developed him into a great rim runner, and he a lot of give a lot of props to him for developing and working on his game to get to that. But Wood is just unfairly just naturally gifted in a way that Powell can work on stuff as much as he wants, but his arms aren't going to grow 3 inches long. It's just, Wood is just an explosive athlete, and they just haven't had that for a big guy since Luka's been drafted. And how often have we wanted, the Mavericks have been a very floor-bound team since Luka's been drafted. They just don't have a ton of explosive, aggressive athletes. Yeah. And sometimes you just need guys like that so Luka can just throw the ball up and let them go get it. Kind of like a quarterback with a freak athlete wide receiver. Like sometimes you just need that. And it just adds a bit of dynamicism to the Mavericks flow and lineup. And it's fun to watch, and I hope it continues in the regular season. It should. Wood it's not like he's doing stuff he hasn't done before. So it's fun to watch.
Well, and the rest of the starters were kind of hit or miss for me. Reggie Bullock just continues to look like that perfect plug-and-play player with Luka. They even got him a nifty little layup in the rim on kind of a long developing curl play where Luka found him on like a 30-foot pass. Yeah. Dorian just is another guy. He's great. He's great. I love, Dorian is just, I'm glad that he has just taken over this spot in my heart that 5 years ago where I was just like, he was dead to me because he couldn't hit anything, and he just looks great. I'm really pleased Dorian Finney-Smith is a Maverick. JaVale McGee did what I expected, which was nothing. Kind of
a couple of nice plays, but he also had a couple
negative
bad
9
plays.
in 11 minutes. I'm sorry, like being a negative 9 in 11 minutes, and again 11 minutes of preseason action. I hear what people are telling me. He had one real cool dunk.
He did. It was really cool.
He also, his gravity was pretty apparent too on a couple of pick and rolls with Luka, where because he's rolling hard, not on it was a side pick and roll almost. And the defense just had to collapse, because if the defense didn't come down on McGee, Luka would have thrown it to McGee. Instead, he kicked it out to the corner for an open three. So like the elements there, I think, are going to be pretty valuable. I think he also looked totally gassed a couple of times, which is going to be, I think, a theme that people are going to need to get used to. He's not going to play more than 20 minutes a game. He may start quarters, he may play spots here and there, but he's a burst player. And that'll be something to see. Yeah. Trying to think if
he's so big too. When you talk about him rolling to the rim, like that's something that differentiates him from like when Dwight or Maxey set screens and roll. Like he forces people to pay attention to him when he goes to when he moves to the rim.
Well, and then there's I can't believe we haven't talked about him earlier, but it was really nice to see Tim Hardaway play.
First game since January, right?
Yeah, I not a stellar game, not a terrible game. It was just a Tim Hardaway game where you could see, he's a big guy, confident shooter. I'm glad to have him back. Is what I'll say.
Yep, same here. Yeah. Nothing much else to say. Just glad he played. He played 15 minutes. I felt like he played a lot, but I mean that's good. Like he needs to get his feet under him, so that was good to see.
Yeah. Past that, you can go through the box score, look at some different guys. There's not like a ton to see. Like it was to me, it's pretty disappointing Josh Green game relative to what we've seen prior, but maybe he was due to step back a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I think what sucked was not, the box score line is what it is, but it was kind of like the opposite of his game one. Like, remember how we were like, man, he was assertive, he was aggressive, he felt controlled, he was making like the right reads without
a lot of rookie. A lot of last year Josh Green mistakes.
That was unfortunate. A lot of passing up shots and just basically all the good things he did in game one, he did the opposite in this game. Which I'm probably still going to have to deal with that as he keeps getting minutes and keeps developing.
Well, I think we've kind of hit on the high points.
I think so.
Yeah. So according to the broadcast, they have a scrimmage at some point this week, and then they play against the Jazz next Friday, which
between preseason games.
Right. I know. It's just, that's how much it's like the NFL is doing this too, where it's like, you want to see people play in highly competitive situations, but like Jalen Suggs got hurt for the Magic tonight. And like Suggs. Yeah. And it's like who wants to get hurt in a preseason game? Christian Wood rolled his ankle. It's like, I understand why these teams are doing this. And what it might end up being is kind of just like the NFL, where the first 4 weeks are pretty sloppy, but you'd rather have that when the games actually count than play like 6 preseason games. I mean, as much as, I love our guy, Brent Brooks, one of our new contributors is like totally sold on McKinley Wright. And I was just like telling me the other night, like, man, McKinley Wright is not making this team. I don't know. It's not his fault. There's no roster spots.
Yeah, he's
like,
a training camp invite.
Right. And it's like Tyler Dorsey was again. It's just such a, like, there's not much to see for these guys who are extremely unlikely to make the team. So it just kind of is what it is.
When you have a team that's like the expectations for the Mavericks, all those guys, they're auditioning for other teams for the most part.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we'll continue to push out stuff over the next week. Like, I recorded a podcast with a friend of the program, Matt Moore, who I think is like finally high on the Mavericks, which is either really good or really bad, depending on your point of view. He had some really interesting arguments about why he thinks the Mavericks will overperform their Vegas over-under, like definitely beat their win total, which I think is like at 48.5. Why he thinks the Jalen, like the betting markets in particular, are really overselling the Jalen Brunson loss. And also he has a bet down for Luka to lead the league in points and assists. He just thinks we're going to get like James Harden's peak season on steroids with usage from Luka. I'm not sure, but like there are times when I could see why he would think that. And, over the next couple of, like, we're going to have plenty of time over the next 2 weeks. I think it's 12 days till opening day, where we're just going to overanalyze everything. I'm going to get a kick out of this.
Yeah, it'll be fun. There's still, it feels like training camp just started, so there's still much more to digest.
That's right. And there'll be practices and things out. There was, I don't know if you and I talked about this, but there's a fun little line out from like Tim Cato's last kind of reported piece that said, hey, the Mavericks aren't super into Christian Wood's effort, which tickled me because it was it's like, well, yeah, that's what every team has a problem with.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been great. I'll do a Mavs after show here with live on Spotify. And then We're going to record a few more things probably going into next week. And, we'll probably record next week. I'm having half the staff over to my house to watch the last preseason game. But, we'll see if we actually record something. Maybe I'll just turn on my mic and we can record us yelling about the game, and then we'll post that.
That would be funny. Like that.
That's right. All right, guys, keep coming to Mavs Moneyball. We got a lot of stuff up over the next several days. Still got a lot of preseason content we've had in the can that we're slowly rolling out. Player previews, what we think about other teams, division previews, what other team sites think about us. There's a really good one from Ben Zadell last week where the Grizzlies blog, my guy Parker Fleming answered some questions about the Mavericks. I really like a lot of what we're putting out. We're putting out a lot of volume shooting. We're the Tim Hardaway of Mavs blogs, I guess. But hey, we appreciate your support, and please leave us a rating and a review and all that good stuff. And we will talk to you at some point this week.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.